what's going on, everybody? It's Josh McCabe here, host of Overflow Beyond the Music. Welcome to another BTM special episode. Really happy you guys have tuned in for this, that you're listening, whether you're listening on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you find your podcasts. Thanks for being part of this. Thanks for being faithful listeners and still tracking with me on this thing. I really, really appreciate that. Now, if you didn't know, we have a YouTube channel that is now active. You can find us online at youtube.com/overflowbtm. And I've been posting some videos up there, some clips of the podcast, some video stuff. So make sure that you go check that out. And really, one of the best ways you can help us out doing this thing is by subscribing. That really just means a ton when you either subscribe on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or whatever, and then on YouTube as well. And that stuff means a ton to us. I know I say it every single episode, but I can't tell you enough how important it is that we get this little BTM family together so that we can stay connected and so that you can make sure you don't miss a moment of great content. I'm doing my best to make sure that I keep these podcasts interesting, fresh, and I guess unique, for lack of better words. But before we get into the episode this week, I want to tell you about something that I want to do as a little bit of a special. Now, I've got a couple books by Kim Walker-Smith. You may know her from Jesus Culture and that big viral video that went around like forever ago, called How He Loves, and she's just an incredible worship leader, and she's still writing and releasing great music today. We had her part of season 2 earlier on, but she sent me a couple copies of her signed book, and I thought it might be a good idea if we could give away some of those books. They're autographed by her. The book is called Brave Surrender, Let God's Love Rewrite Your Story. And here's how we're going to give them away. It's really, really, really simple. All you need to do is you need to go on our Instagram account. It's at overflowbtm. All you got to do is make sure you're following us and send us a DM and say you want the book. And the only thing we will try and figure out, if you live like on far away, I don't know how we're going to get the book to you, but we'll figure something out. So if you want to get a copy of this book by Kim Walker-Smith, all I'm going to ask you to do is hop on Instagram, make sure you're following us, and just send me a DM. That's all you got to do. I will make sure to respond back as quickly as I can, and I want to get a free book in your hands. So hopefully you guys will take some time to do that very simple little step. Now, I'm going to take a moment, and I try not to do a lot of self-promotion on this podcast as much as I can avoid it, but many of you know I've had a band or a music project for a number of years now called Caves, and that started probably back in about 2014, 2015, and we had the opportunity to do some really cool stuff with it. Caves was kind of always a bit of a solo project, even though different people would kind of come in along on the journey with me, and it really just came from my own story of just being in a cave season and having a time in my life where I stepped away from everything and just tried to reset. And I think what's interesting about it is that I really felt, and maybe convinced myself, that was a one-time thing. I would never have to go through something like that again, or I'd never have to, step back to reset, And I found myself here in Nashville realizing that God is resetting me again. And it's good stuff. I'm really diving deep into a lot of just things in my life and asking God to really make me new, really make me whole in Him. And that's really personal for me. It's a long story that don't have time to get into on this podcast. But one of the things I really felt like was that my story was evolving, and though I didn't necessarily feel like I was in this, quote-unquote caves season anymore, I just felt like it was something I hid behind. And, Caves, we released these songs, and one of the songs that did really well for us was a song called My God that features Amanda Cook of Bethel Music, and it reached further than I could have imagined. And as I look back at it, I kind of assess it and realize that I had spent a lot of time hiding behind the name Caves, and I kind of had separated my life as a pastor and as a musician. They were separate worlds for me. There was Josh McCabe, the pastor, and Josh McCabe, the musician. And Caves was my musical outlet, and pastoring was my other outlet. And they were really separate. And as I really am honest about it, I think I felt really comfortable hiding behind a band name with music that would kind of allow, I don't know, me just to do something that felt not as vulnerable as you'd think. And really, as I take a step back and look at where I'm at now, I'm at this place where I'm really not sure I care about trying to fit in any particular space. And to be honest, I'm not really sure where I fit. I've kind of felt like I'm not sure anymore where I fit, and that I'm not really in this cave season anymore, but I would describe it as more of a hidden season. And I had this pastor speak over some words over my life that they're close friends and mean a lot in our journey. She said to me that you're walking in a hidden season, and you're like an arrow that's being pulled back. And the more tension you allow God to place on this arrow, the further and faster you're going to fly when it's time to go. And I was like, man, that is my story right now, where I feel so pulled back. I feel so almost left behind in some ways, and I feel like everyone's living their best life now, and I'm sitting here making podcasts, and I'm not even sure if anybody's listening, to be honest with you. But I really felt like it was time for a new season. So about a week ago, I shut down Caves. Caves is, as my musical outlet, is no longer a thing. It's time to close that season. And I'm releasing new music. And by the time you hear this, it will be released. I released some new music on Friday under my name, Josh McCabe. Here I am. No hiding, no nothing. This is my story. This is my journey. I'm going to sing about the hidden season, and I'm going to sing about where I'm at and what I'm going through. So I would love if you would take a second and check it out. You can find it online at joshmccabemusic.com, or you can find me on Instagram at joshmccabemusic. And I would love you to check out this new song called Hidden Seasons. And if it's all right with you, I'm going to play a little quick clip of it before we get in our interview today.
And I've been cut open, painting my scars for the world to see. And I've been the headline of the summer, wondering what people think when they see me. And it may seem in the moment like everyone is chosen, and you have been pushed aside. These hidden seasons, I heard way too much. I don't know where I'm going, but I know you've always been close.
Well, hey, thanks so much for listening to that clip. Hopefully you didn't fast forward all the way to the interview by now, because I just appreciate you guys being on this journey with me, and it's going to be fun. But hey, we got an interview today. We got a BTM special. This is our sort of in-between seasons episode. We got season 3 launching real soon, but I got the chance to catch up with someone who's become a friend. His name's Andrew Holt. He's a worship pastor at my church, The Belonging, in Nashville, Tennessee. And what I love about Andrew is that he is so humble and so talented, and he has the really fun and unique job of being the worship pastor when some of your worship leaders are some of the most renowned songwriters and worship leaders and musicians in the world. And he leads with just such humility. He honors everybody he comes in contact with, and he does so with such excellence. His journey is really unique about how he found himself at this church and later found himself working and pastoring at it. There's some leadership nuggets in here for you today if you will really just dive in and really pay attention to what Andrew's saying, because the way he has approached life and his journey is really inspiring to me. So without further ado, here is Andrew Holt, worship pastor at The Belonging, Nashville, Tennessee. Right now now, and it's kind of a little funny that we're doing this over the phone and across the country. I am in Southern California, and I'm talking with my worship pastor, who is in Nashville, Tennessee, where I live, and we're not doing this in person, but we're doing it over the phone because of just our schedules and everything. But I'd like to welcome to Overflow Beyond the Music, Andrew Holt. He's the worship pastor at the Belonging Co. in Nashville, Tennessee, and a voice extraordinaire and songwriter and worship leader. And man, I'm just thankful. Thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I'm honored to be a part, man.
Well, it made sense to have you on because, we've had Meredith Andrews on, we've had Mia Fields on, and both of them have talked about you. And so I go, maybe we should get this guy on and have a little conversation with him and see what's going on.
Amazing. They're the best.
They are the best. And I mean, I like to brag to people when they ask about what it's like to live in Nashville. And I get to say, well, I don't know who's leading worship on Sunday. And truthfully, I don't really care because it's either going to be like Meredith Andrews or like Ben Candelon or yourself or like Mia Fields or Carrie Job or some like indie pop artist that I've never heard of but has like 20 billion streams online,
Yeah.
So it's a unique situation.
It really is crazy, but we're just all a bunch of friends who, honestly, like what I love about our team is that every single one of them has encountered God and had their lives changed at our church in such a significant way. And so we're all just there to provide an atmosphere of space for someone else to have the same thing, and it's really an honor to be a part of it. So, and glad to finally meet you.
Yeah,
you're
man.
Coming to our church.
Yeah, it's
amazing.
Yeah, just when we thought about where we were going to go to church when we moved to Nashville, the Belonging seemed like the right place, and probably for reasons that are different than most. Like Matthew and Taryn Cross, who are amazing pastors there, have been really influential in the lives of my wife and I, and so I'm happy to be part of the community, and I'm looking forward to getting to know you more over the next couple years.
Absolutely, same.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about your journey and how you ended up at the Belonging Co. in Nashville, Tennessee.
Yeah, so I'm one of the few people who actually grew up in Nashville. A little rare, but I grew up just south of Nashville in a little city called Thompson Station.
Yeah.
My dad is actually a Baptist pastor, and we moved from East Tennessee to Nashville when I was really, really young. So this is absolutely home for me. So I got involved when I was really young at a church, really where I started leading worship down in Thompson Station. And like a lot of people, just started leading in my youth group, leading in house churches.
Right.
But pretty early on when I was young, just felt that this is what I wanted to do with my life. I played sports when I was young a little bit, and as soon as I started leading worship, I just dropped it all and was like, no, this is what makes me feel alive. And really just fell in love with God's presence and fell in love with seeing my friends encounter him. And long story short, got really involved in my church, came on staff at my church when I was really young, when I was like a freshman in high school. They're paying me like $200 a month to lead in my youth group and just kind of help out, doing rostering, all that good stuff. And, just started getting more and more involved every year through high school, taking on more responsibility. I went to college at a community college in Franklin, just south of Nashville, got my associates, and then I got my bachelor's from Trevecca here in Nashville. And the whole time was really just diving into my church and growing as a worship leader and growing in so many aspects of that. And then my junior year at Trevecca was 2014, and there was this little thing in this couple from Australia's basement starting called The Belonging that I didn't really know much about, but I had some friends that were posting about it. And I honestly probably would have went in their basement if I didn't think it was like an exclusive Bible study. I didn't know if I was welcome.
Yeah.
But I just had some people that we knew that were posting about it, and so as soon as they left their basement and started meeting in an actual venue, me and my wife now, we weren't even engaged to be married yet, but we went one Tuesday night. They met on Tuesday nights, so it was perfect. Even though I was on staff at another church, I could go to this place on Tuesday night. And one night we just went, and it was 200 people in this tiny little venue in South Nashville.
Yeah.
And as soon as, the only way I know to describe it, as soon as worship started, it was like a bucket of water just got dumped on me. And I didn't even realize how dry I was. But I was like a sponge. Like, I just started soaking it in. And I instantly just started crying, and God started doing so much in my heart. And I got back in the car with Sarah, my wife now, and I just looked at her and I said, like, this is what I'm hungry for. Like, this is what I'm after, is the presence of God. Like, I felt that same presence that I did when I was a 13-year-old kid. I felt that night. Yeah. And, you know, it didn't necessarily look anything like what the Belonging looks like now. It was just a very terrible PA, you know, no lighting. Yeah. You know, they were using like a little Behringer console.
Nice.
It didn't sound amazing, but the same presence of God that's with us now every week was there that night. And I just caught a hold of it, and something changed, something shifted in my heart. And so we started coming every Tuesday night, just attending. I was still on staff at my old church, and God just began to really do a work in our hearts. And long story short, I met Henry a few months into that. And sorry if you hear a train. There's a train coming by my house right now.
Nice, love it.
Awesome. And just kind of got to know him a little bit, but we never really hung out. Like, he would just kind of see me every once in a while at church on Tuesday night.
Yeah.
And just kind of ask me what I was doing and if I was still on staff at that church, and I would say yes. And about a year into that, not even a year, a little less than a year, that season at my church ended. And I just had this like sense inside, like Holy Spirit saying, you're supposed to be at the Belonging. Like, that's supposed to be your home. I wasn't involved at all. I barely knew Henry. And it was honestly a big leap of faith for us, because we were about to get married, and I was about to graduate college on the same day. We were getting married May 9th, 2015. And
wow.
Everything was about to just, you know, I was about to grow up, you know, I was about to step into this season of like being a man and being a husband. And so stepping out in faith and not having a job wasn't really like what in the world's eyes I should have done, but I just knew that was what I was supposed to do. And so I had coffee with Henry. This was like December 2014.
And for those people who don't know, because I think we forget sort of being at the church, you kind of forget the context. Henry Seeley and Alex Seeley are the lead pastors of the Belonging. And no, I'm just going to help our listeners get context. And Henry was, I'm not sure if I'm saying this correctly, but like one of the founding people of Planet Shakers ministry, and wrote like his CCLI list of songs he's written is just really long. Really, really, really long. And he's written amazing worship. And so, definitely like a veteran of the of worship ministry.
Yeah, that's who he is to the core. That's his whole background. And at that point of the church, at the Belonging, he was leading worship literally every Tuesday night, leading the team, had built the team, as well as being the senior pastor with Alex, his wife. And so in my head, I'm like, they don't need another worship leader. You know, they've got Henry, he's killing it. But I just at the core of who I am, I'm just a local church guy. Like, I love being a part of church and serving. So I'm like, if I'm going to be planted in a place, I got to serve. I got to get involved. And so we went to coffee one day, and I just said, hey, man, this has happened. I know within me that I'm supposed to be involved at the church. I know I'm supposed to jump in. And so if you need someone to clean the toilet, if you need someone to run cables, put out chairs, like, I just want to jump in and get involved. And I knew they needed help because, you know, they were loading in every single week in different venues. They hadn't even really landed at Rocketown yet. They were about to kind of land there full time, which is the venue we still meet in now. But he said, I know you're supposed to be a part of this. I've known you're supposed to be a part of it for a while. And he said that night we were hanging out, he was having like a creative worship team Christmas party at his house. And he said, you should come. And I was like, oh, okay. And it was just like just a moment of like God really showing me, like, I've got this. You're hearing me. and the step of faith that you're taking is right, you know? And so, from that point, I really just got involved singing BGVs and playing acoustic. And I got a job at a coffee shop in town working 40 hours a week.
Wow.
And just like jumped all in. And so at that point, Henry was leading the team, and he would call me, you know, some Tuesday mornings. We were only meeting on Tuesdays at the point, and be like, "Hey man, could you come play guitar tonight?" Or, "Hey man, could you come jump in and just play acoustic and do BGVs?" And I was like, I just always said yes. I was just available, you know. And
Right.
A little bit into that, he kind of just started saying, "Hey, look, would you want to come and help me do planning center? Would you want to come help me do the schedule for the team?"
Yeah.
I led at a team night at their house one night, and I started leading a bit. But that was like a season for me of about a year, honestly, of working at this coffee shop and just volunteering at church. And God did so much in my heart in that season because, you know, since I was a freshman in high school, I've been working at church, you know? People listen to this podcast may be in a similar situation where, you know, once you do that for a while, it's easy to let your identity get built up around being a worship leader. It's easy to let your social status, your friendships, your finance, everything is stemming from this thing of being a worship leader. And it feels right and it feels good because you're doing a good thing. You're doing the call in your life. But in reality, if you're letting that become the priority, if you're letting that become everything, then you're missing the whole point. And that was where I was before I came to belonging. I was in this place of, I thought in my mind that I was doing everything right, but actually I had let it all kind of get out of order a bit.
Right.
And God just began to show me what it was like just to be a son again, and what it meant to just be satisfied with me and him, not with a guitar in my hands or singing a song or leading a team. Like, I didn't have any of it. It was all gone. And there was a season there where I was waking up at 5 a.m. every day working at a coffee shop. And the biggest thing that God really taught me in that season was like, if you can steward what I've given you, even if it may seem small, if you can steward what I put in your hands, I can trust you with more. And that at that point, literally all I had was my wife, stewarding our marriage, and stewarding this little coffee shop job I had, you know?
Yeah.
And dealing with people that, you know, weren't always easy to deal with, washing dishes. And I hated washing dishes. I hated running food, you know, all the good stuff.
Yeah.
But I was just learning, and I said, all right, like, I'm just going to steward what you've given me. And I really believe that because of what I did in that season and how I stewarded what God gave me, he was able to trust me with more. And so Henry asked me to come on in March of 2016 to lead the worship team, and I've been doing that since then, and that's kind of how I got involved. But it's just been an amazing journey. So,
man, we definitely need to do coffee when I'm back in Nashville, because our stories seem very similar. I mean, I went through a year where I completely didn't even pick up a guitar because I needed to reset. And I think that's so interesting that you talk about identity and finding your identity in what you do. And it doesn't even have to be music. It can be anything. We begin to wonder who we are outside of what we do. Yeah. And if you can't just be who you are outside of what you do, then you're going to not be who you are when you're doing what you're doing. You're always going to have a piece of you missing. Absolutely. And I wonder, like, how did that season prepare you to pastor and shepherd people who, like, when you say a name, and like, this is not a name drop podcast, but when you say a name like Carrie Job, Meredith Andrews, you know, on for musicians like who would know who Austin Davis is, who plays drums for all these different artists, you know, you think you drummer, worship leader, songwriter. How did your journey prepare you to help them on their journey? Right.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? One of the things we say a lot within really our whole church culture, but also within the worship and creative team, is that we care more about people's hearts and who they are more than their gift and what they can bring to our church. And it seems so simple, but I think for where we are as a church as a whole in America, especially in the South, it's become so much about, oh, you have an amazing gift and you have this amazing gift that God's given you, so let's give you a platform, right now to do that. And it's actually like, no, like we care more about you as a person and you finding freedom and you finding the things that you need from God and your relationship with him and the community that you need here in the church more than what you can bring to our church and the gift on your life.
Yeah.
And I think I've learned how to lead that way because of that season that I went through, you know, where Henry saw my gift, but he didn't automatically give me the position of worship pastor, even though he may have sensed that was coming down the road. He let me go through a season of really just ripping some of that identity stuff out, ripping some of that things out that he knew that God needed to do in my life. And it wasn't like I was sitting down with Henry every week and having coffee and he was talking to me about it. Like, that's, you know, I was just coming to church, getting involved and what God was doing in his presence. And, you know, like there was just, that was the season for me. And so now that I'm in a position where, you know, I am building the team, I am in charge of adding people to the team. It's like before we ever care about someone's gift, someone walks through the door and it's like, I've done A, B, C at this church and this church and this church. You know, we're in Nashville. That happens all the time. We're like, that's amazing. Why don't you just come and sit and be a part of the house, put your roots down, build a community. And if God has that in store, then he'll open the door and he'll make it obvious. But what we care more about than that is actually you as a person, you know? I just had coffee with a guy today who came from a season that he was a worship leader. He did that, you know, consistently a lot, and he's just moved to Nashville. And I just literally sat across the table from him, looked him in the eyes and said, you know, bro, we love you for who you are as a person. Not what you can do for our church, but actually who you are and what you bring to this community. And so just come and sit and, you know, be fed and like put your roots down and build community, and then we'll go from there. But yeah.
Let me ask you a tough question along those lines, because we definitely don't cater towards, on this podcast, it's all about getting to know the people behind the music. It's not necessarily a leadership podcast or for pastors, but I want to ask a tough question for you, because, you know, someone might be sitting here and saying, well, you know, we care about the heart. We want, you know, we care more about who you are, not just your gift. And they might go, well, that easy for you to say when you're in Nashville, Tennessee, and you've got 20 drummers and you've got a resume full of award-winning worship leaders just sitting in your community. Yeah, of course you could say to someone, we just want you. We don't necessarily need your gift. What about the person that's like, no, he's our only drummer, like the only one?
Absolutely.
How do you balance that scale? Because it seems that you could throw away the ideals really quickly for the sake of, I don't know, desperation or a survival mentality.
Absolutely. You know, I think no matter what context you're in, obviously everyone's blueprint, everyone's church is going to be different. And I believe God has a different blueprint for every single house. But that doesn't change, like, for me, the non-negotiables. And, you know, I found in this season that relationship and family is everything when it comes to team.
Yeah.
Instead of just filling a roster on Planning Center and making sure that I've got a full band every single week and that all the pieces fit together and we've got the tracks rig lined up. Obviously, we care a lot about all those things. But before any of that, it's actually about family and people and their lives. And so, you know, whether you've got one drummer or you've got 20 drummers, that doesn't change the fact that you can build relationship with people before you add them to your team.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a key, is that, you know, now because of the way we run things, I build a relationship with people. I have a history with them before they step onto our platform and stage to lead. Yep. And that way, you know, before we have a little gathering time, every time before we lead worship, just side stage to pray and to really just set our hearts on Jesus. And when I look around the circle, I know those people, I know their families, I know what's going on in their lives, I know how they came to the belonging, I know how they got plugged in and what God did in their life when they did come. And because of that, I know the motives in their hearts before we step up to lead together. And it brings this beautiful unity of, like, we all came here and got our lives changed by God's presence. And so this is a moment now for us to provide an atmosphere for someone else walking in for the first time. Whereas if it was just an audition and I knew they were a good drummer, but I didn't know anything else about them, I couldn't say that. I couldn't say that honestly, and I couldn't really know the motive of their heart. And obviously there's things that happen and people have off days, and there's nothing you can do to avoid that. But no matter what context you're in as a worship pastor or leader or team leader, I believe there's still that chance to build relationship before you add someone to your team. And obviously that looks different for everyone, but I think it's so vital.
I agree with you. And I once talked to a pastor when I was a worship pastor for a season, and I said, well, like I'm struggling with this because like I need to put a full team together. And he goes, you want to know how we started our church? Yeah. It was me on acoustic guitar and singing. And then we had a bass player come, and it was me on acoustic and bass. And then we had a
acoustic
drummer
and bass. Come on,
bro. And then he goes, then it was acoustic, bass, and drummer.
Yeah.
And then the bass player left for a job, so now it was just acoustic and drums. Absolutely. And we just rolled with what we had. And we could have hired guys for $50 or $75 or $100 a service, but we didn't.
Yeah.
It was about organic, and I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, man. And I mean, obviously our church started in our pastor's basement, so they were just doing acoustic vocals every night, and God's presence fell in a mighty way every single time. So there is no formula to it, but I don't think you have to sacrifice anything. Like I think God, what we found in this season is that by leading it this way and like operating in this way, God never lets you go without. Like he's going to provide, he's going to bring the people that need to be a part of it. And I think it just takes having that heart of like, God, this is how we want our team to be. This is how we want our church to operate. And we're going to trust that you're going to bring the people that need to be a part of it. Because, you do see our roster and all these people, but in reality, there's weeks that I don't have a drummer because they're all on the road touring, so
right.
There's moments of like, all right, God, you're going to have to come through, and this is the time for someone to step up. But so I think God honors it when you do it the right way, and it's pretty amazing what he can do.
Well, I think it's cool too, because what I've noticed is I've actually attended the Belonging back in, I want to say 2014 actually.
Oh wow!
When it was just very small.
Yeah.
And I probably had gone at least once a year until before moving, and to see the organic growth of it wasn't a church in the early days trying to shove their songs that they're writing down everyone's throats. It was like leading songs that were resonating with the community, and then naturally the overflow became songs that were for their community. It wasn't like an agenda item. So like how has that sort of become organic in the development of the church writing songs? Because I mean, you guys probably could have made an album before you even left the basement.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when I came on in 2016, one of the first things we did was actually like our very first writing retreat. And so I was kind of able to be a part of that whole process. That was like my first job, if you want to say, like was putting together this writing retreat. And the reason we did it was, Henry and I were choosing songs for church every week. And it just kind of got to this point where we really weren't able to find songs that were speaking right to the heart of our house and what God was doing in our house. And it was like, Henry and Alex felt like it was time for us to start writing. And so we gathered some of like the core team of worship leaders and producers and went away for just a few days and for a week. And from the very first thing we did was we sat down, and Henry just looked at everyone and said, I don't want you to look at this as just like any other writing retreat, because obviously on our team, there's writers that are writing songs for every church, every movement across the nation.
Yeah. Right. Writing 5 songs a week, 6 songs a week.
Exactly. That's their full-time job. And he said, I don't want you to look at this as just another writing retreat, but actually the whole purpose of this is not for a record. It's not for an album. It's just to write for our church, for our community, in our house. And
the community building that happens as a result.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was amazing for just our team of worship leaders to get away. We'd never been able to do that before and get to know each other at a deeper level. But even now, like we've released a record and we're about to release another one. And through all of that season, it's just been this constant recentering of like, this is why we're doing this. It's not for the record. That's just a byproduct of what it is. It's actually we really believe God's called us to write for our house. What are the songs that are on our hearts that we know is going to bring a new level of breakthrough, a new level of authority and anointing into our community every Sunday and every Tuesday.
Yeah.
And that's not an easy thing to do, to be honest, because, you know, you start writing for church and it can bring a lot of things out. And what I love about Henry and Alex is that they're always going to be the people that bring everyone back to know this is the purpose of what we do. This is why we're doing it. You know, remember that first time that you had that encounter with God. These songs carry that for someone else. And so yeah, it's been a beautiful season of just really learning for me. I mean, I've never before, that first retreat was the first time I'd really ever co-written before. So
wow.
It's been a just amazing season of learning and growing as a writer. But what I've loved about it is that, you know, every time we sit down to write a song, it's just with our church in mind. And it's been amazing to see these songs carried out through the world and other churches doing them.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we really do see that as just an overflow of us just writing for our house and our church. And
yeah,
I really think that's the way it should be. You know, I think every single church should write if they have ability to write for their church, but I don't necessarily think every single church should release records.
I would fully agree with you.
And I think it's become just kind of a cool thing to do, you know, but it's like, if God's saying that, then do it. But if God's not saying that, then don't do it, you know, because if he's saying to do it, there's going to be a grace on it and he'll provide the avenues that it needs to have. But if not, there won't be a grace, and it's going to be really difficult and really hard. So,
well,
that's my 2 cents of it all. But
I agree. I was talking to another worship leader, John Egan, about this, and that like I had gone through a season where I felt like God had given us the grace to release a record, and it did really, really well. Really, really, really well is an exaggeration. What I really mean to say is that it was successful. It accomplished what we wanted to do. People were impacted, all that stuff. And the process was good. Yeah. And then I kept wanting to release more and more and more and more. And there was one that I say was the record that destroyed me. The record that caused a burnout. Wow. Because I don't think I ever asked the Lord on that one if I should do it. I just felt like we got to keep up.
Sure.
And so what's the attitude? Because, I mean, you could sit down and literally the songs that, between all your worship leaders, the songs that got thrown away from other people's albums could literally make up an album, and it would be a great album. Like the songs that nobody recorded could be a great album. You could be releasing 4 albums a year if you wanted to. What sort of dictates the pace in which you guys, as the Belonging Co. and the whole collaborative community, what dictates the pace of releasing albums for you guys?
I think it's honestly just that. It's following God's voice and following where we feel like the grace is. And that's the goal. The goal is not to have a great album. The goal is not to have a great group of songs. You know, the goal is to, if we're going to release something, that it has to carry the weight of heaven. It has to carry the weight of God's presence. And it has to be able to go and do something in other churches and, you know, carry that breakthrough that we're after. And I don't think you get that by just having a heart that's, I just want to release a great album that's going to be successful in all the world's standards. You know, for us, like streams and album sales and all that is not success. It's a sign that God's doing something with it, but it's not the sign of success for us. It's not how we grade it. It's actually like, is God moving through this? And has God told us to release this? And do we feel a peace about it? And that goes case by case. And I think that dictates the pace. And it comes from Henry and Alex, you know, like Henry's been doing this his whole life pretty much, you know? Yeah. He's been writing, mixing, producing albums, and he's seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, I think, along the way.
I can't wait to get Henry on this podcast.
Yeah, you should.
I need to play some throwback tunes.
Yeah.
Like,
come on.
There was a song he released that he borderline rapped in it.
Really?
And, there's a lyrics like, the Holy Spirit's got me bumping.
Oh, I think he's
running with the
told
beat
me about that.
Because this place is jumping.
Yeah, he's told me about that. I actually haven't heard it, but...
So good. So good. It was like the soundtrack of my youth. So I'll have to help that out.
But honestly, he's such a gift to our house because if you know Henry at all, like he's so in tune with God and the Holy Spirit, and he's such just a lover of worship and God's presence, and that's his priority 100%, and not any of the other stuff. The rest is just an overflow of that. So,
and I love it too because he's a real deal. If I see him, he says hi to me every week, and we've never really met.
Right.
Like he's washing his hands. My first or second time there, we're washing hands in the bathroom.
Yeah.
And he starts a conversation with me. I'm like, dude, I feel like in back of my head, I'm thinking I led like 8 of your songs in youth group, and
it's so good.
I don't care, but I'm just like, it's just this moment where you're kind of like, oh, it's funny how life aligns. I have one more question for you because I think it might be interesting. What's it like pastoring when you look across your front line of singers or your back line and you're seeing, I know you don't see this when you see them, you see the people, but there's awards, there's chart toppers, there's Grammy winners, people that arguably by public standards have exceeded your resume.
Yeah.
What is that like to try and pastor and shepherd people in that sphere?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I had to cross that line, like that battle. I had to fight that battle the first day. I got asked to be a part of this because, especially at that time, now it's a little different, but at that time I was literally the youngest person besides one person on the worship team. Before you even talk about resume, like that's just crazy. And then my resume did not, by any means, and this is not me being overly humble, it just literally is the truth, did not say that I should be the worship pastor of the Belonging. And so from the very beginning, like I just had to go to God and say, God, how do I do this? And he just said, if I've put you here. And that was the thing for me, is that whole journey, it was so obviously that God put me there.
Right.
I could not have worked hard enough, met the right people, said the right things enough to put myself in that position. And so he said to me, if I've put you here, then I've given you the anointing and the authority to carry it and to do it well. And every step of the journey, like, there's seasons that are stretching. Obviously, the season's been very stretching, but there's moments that are stretching. There's things that happen that I have to learn, I have to like grow in. And it's just been constantly going back and recentering on that of like, no, I know that I have the authority and I know that I have the anointing to carry this and to lead this well. And God's never let me down yet. So it's been working. Yeah. And obviously I haven't been perfect in that, and there's no way that I've done everything right, but I have at least had a heart that's like, God, I want to steward this just like I was stewarding that coffee shop, just like I was stewarding my youth group when I was 15, This is no different. It's just a little bigger, but I've learned how to do it because I've stewarded those things well. And it becomes this thing of like, if I have to deal with something or I have to talk to someone, I know that God is with me, and he's never had me do it on my own. Like I just trust the anointing. I trust the authority that he's given me. I lean on that rather than my strength, which is, in my experience, which is kind of easy because I don't have as much experience as anyone else. But yeah, it's been this amazing season, man. And there's moments that are obviously harder than others, but I think God gives you a grace when you operate that way. And obviously, honestly, our team is just amazing. All the people that you have mentioned, like the way they've supported me and loved me and really just championed me in this season has been amazing. And Henry himself, to have Henry say, here's the worship team, take it and run with it, that gives you this like confidence of like, okay, like here we go. And he's had my back and has taught me so much just by watching him. It's not like we hang out all the time and he tells me what I should be doing. It's just like watching how he leads and watching how he interacts with people in the team. And it's just been a massive growing season for me, but it does say a
lot about the people in your team.
Absolutely.
That they walk in with no ego and going, no, Andrew's in charge, and what he needs me to do, I'll do.
Right. Yeah, man. And I think like no matter whoever's listening to this podcast, whatever situation you're in, it's like, if God's put you there, then he'll give you the tools that you need to operate and do it well, and to honestly kill it, and God, it's not an arrogant thing. It's actually just a healthy confidence in God and who you are as a son or daughter, in saying that, I know who I am and where I stand with my Father. And as long as I'm in the middle of his will and I'm in something that he's placed me in and he's made a way, then he will give me everything I need to kill it and do it well.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So it's just like that healthy confidence. And obviously there's days that I don't feel it and there's days that I feel it more than others. But man, it's been amazing. So
that's incredible, man.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I know a little bit about your journey, more so just kind of from a distance. But, as we get ready to close this, I always love to hear a song that resonates with whoever I'm interviewing. And it, usually is one of their own. But in this case, I'd love you to just tell me about a song that has really helped you through a season, that you needed it and spoke to you in a personal way.
Oh man, there's so many. I think songs for me they are really seasonal, you know. But there's an old Jesus Culture song called "I Want to Know You." I don't know if you remember that song.
Oh, so good.
Know you, just be
such a little.
Me.
That keyboard line is so so good.
I think that's a song that I come back to a lot. Just that can kind of just be my prayer a lot. Is God, I want to know you in a deeper way. Let your spirit and your presence, mark my life and overwhelm and overcome me. Be everything that I am. That song, like an old song that is one of my favorites of all time, is Jesus, Holy and Anointed One. Mm-hmm. That bridge, your name is like honey on my lips. That one I find myself going back to a lot. But yeah, so there's a couple.
That's awesome, man. I love that. Love it. But hey, we are going to listen to some music from The Belonging right now. And you guys just put out a brand new album recently called Awe and Wonder, but also the first album that you guys released called All the Earth is equally as awesome. And both these albums feature some incredible songs, incredible worship leaders. You got to check this out. So, Andrew, I just want to say thank you for your leadership. Thank you for welcoming me into your church home and making my family feel like we truly belong at The Belonging.
Well, we're honored to have you, Josh. Thanks so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Well, here we are. We're going to check out this song featuring Andrew Holt and The Belonging Worship. Check it out. There's my conversation with Andrew Holt. Make sure that you go get a copy of The Belonging's new album. It is called Awe and Wonder. You're going to love it. It features artists like Carrie Job, Daniela Mason, Andrew Holt, Henry Seeley, and many, many, many more incredible songs on it. Make sure you check it out. Again, make sure you're following us online at Overflow BTM on Instagram, Overflow BTM on Twitter, as well as Facebook. Our YouTube channel is the same. And if you want one of those Kim Walker-Smith books, make sure that you hop on Instagram and send me a DM, because I'd love to get one in your hands. There are very limited copies, so make sure that you do so right away. This is Josh McCabe. I'm your host here on Overflow Beyond the Music. We'll see you again next time.